Before I begin, if you've ever loved someone more than yourself, and they made you feel like a stranger, or worse, like you never existed, then maybe, just maybe, this story is yours too. Please, subscribe to When Voices Break, where real stories live, where pain is shared and healed. Now, breathe in. This is how my son told me I was dead to him. I wasn't a special woman. I wasn't rich. I didn't have degrees hanging on my wall. I wasn't known for my smile or my stories. But I loved my son. I loved him from the first moment I saw that faint pink line on a cheap pregnancy test. I was 22. The kind of young that pretends it's brave but is shaking on the inside. His father, Aaron, wasn't surprised, just annoyed. He rubbed his temples and said, "You're keeping it?" I nodded. He stood up, grabbed his keys, and left. Didn't slam the door, didn't shout, just left, like he was late for a meeting. That door never opened again. I remember sitting on the floor in our old apartment, one hand on my stomach, the other covering my mouth as I tried not to cry too loudly. The neighbors already thought I was pathetic. I didn't want to give them more proof. That night I whispered to my belly, "It's just you and me now, but I promise, I'll protect you, even if it kills me." I meant it. When Ethan was born, the world got quieter. Not because babies are quiet, God no. He screamed like he had something important to say, even back then. But my mind, my soul, everything in me went still. I held him in my arms, and nothing else mattered. Not the bills, not Aaron, not the fear, just him. The nurse said, "You've got a fighter." And I smiled through my exhaustion and said, "He'll need to be." We lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. It had peeling wallpaper and a kitchen window that refused to close. During winters, I'd line the edges with plastic wrap and duct tape. I slept on the couch. Ethan got the bedroom. He was just a baby, but I wanted him to feel like he had space in the world. I worked double shifts, cafeteria in the morning, cleaning offices at night. Sometimes I only got 3 hours of sleep. There were nights I'd hold Ethan in one arm while mopping with the other. But I never let him see me cry. That was my rule. Moms don't cry in front of their babies. We break quietly, like waves in the dark. On weekends, I'd take him to the park, even if I could barely afford the bus fare. We'd sit on the swings and he'd point to birds like they were made of gold. I'd pack sandwiches with one slice of cheese and he'd act like it was a feast. I remember once, he couldn't have been more than 5, he said, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a real house, with a garden and a dog and everything." I laughed and said, "I don't need a house, baby, I just need you." But the truth was, there were nights I dreamed about that house, a kitchen without leaks, a bedroom with a real bed. But mostly, I dreamed about a future where he didn't have to see me struggle. He was a good kid, quiet, thoughtful. He used to fold his tiny socks and place them in neat piles. He'd help carry groceries without being asked. Sometimes I'd find little notes tucked into my purse. "You're the best mom ever. Thank you for dinner. Don't work too hard today." I saved every single one of them, still have them actually, in a shoebox under my bed. I can't bring myself to throw them away. Ethan started working part-time when he was 12, just bagging groceries at a corner store, but he was proud. He came home one day, handed me 3 crumpled dollar bills and said, "Dinner's on me tonight." I cried in the bathroom that night, not because I was sad, but because I didn't want him to feel like he had to carry me. That was my job. When he got into college, I nearly fainted. He'd been accepted to a state university, full scholarship for academics. I still had to help with textbooks, housing, food, but he was going. I sold the necklace my mother left me, pawned an old radio, took an extra night shift at the grocery store. Every dollar I had went to him. He didn't know. I never told him. He thought I was doing fine. And maybe I was, because seeing him grow, watching him become a man, that made everything worth it. He still called every Sunday at first, told me about his classes, his professors, his terrible dorm food. Then came Jessica. I still remember the first time I heard her name. He said, "Jess and I are grabbing dinner later. She's cool." Cool. I didn't think much of it. But that cool girl would become the fracture in our story. He brought her home that Christmas. She was beautiful, tall, polished, expensive. Her nails looked like she didn't do dishes. Her smile never reached her eyes. I tried. God knows I tried. I cooked a full dinner, decorated the apartment, wore my best dress. I even used the nice plates, the ones we only used for birthdays. Jessica walked in and said, "Oh, this is cozy." I laughed awkwardly and offered her tea. She asked if I had almond milk, in a home where sometimes we couldn't afford regular milk. I tried to keep up, asked her about her family, her work. She answered like she was doing me a favor. Ethan didn't notice, or maybe he didn't want to. He smiled, touched her arm, looked at her like she was magic. And I saw it then, I was already becoming the background of his life. After that, things changed. Fewer calls, fewer visits, excuses that felt like lies. We're traveling this weekend. Jessica's parents want us over. We're busy with work stuff. I told myself it was normal. He was growing up, building his own life. It was selfish to expect him to hold my hand forever, but I was still his mother. The last straw came on a cold January night. He called, after weeks of silence, and said, "Jess wants to invite you over for dinner, Friday night." I cried after I hung up, not because of the invite, but because I missed his voice. I spent all day cooking my famous chicken casserole, the one he loved as a kid. I wrapped it in foil, placed it in a towel to keep it warm, wore my nicest sweater, did my hair, even put on lipstick. When I arrived, Jessica opened the door. She smiled with her lips, not her eyes. "Oh," she said, "I thought you were bringing wine." Ethan didn't stand, just waved from the couch. Dinner was strained. Jessica talked about her trip to Paris, about her new skincare routine. When I mentioned a story from Ethan's childhood, she interrupted. "He hates that story, right, babe?" He laughed, not a loud laugh, just a quiet chuckle. But it broke something in me. After dinner, I stood up and said I should head out. I left the casserole behind. Jessica stared at it like it was a bag of trash. "We don't really eat that stuff," she said. Ethan followed me to the door. I turned, hoping, praying, for a hug, a thank you, anything. Instead, he looked at me and said, "Mom, listen, we've been talking, and Jessica doesn't feel comfortable when you're around. It's a lot. You get emotional, you say things, it's kind of toxic." I blinked, tried to process. He wasn't done. "I think it's better if we take some space." I took a step back. My hands were shaking. I couldn't feel the casserole dish anymore. And then he said it. 4 words I will never forget. "You're dead to me." Those words didn't echo. They didn't ring in my ears like some dramatic scene in a movie. No, they landed like a dull thud inside my chest. Like someone had just dropped a stone into my lungs and now I couldn't breathe. I stared at Ethan, my son, the boy I raised, the baby I held through fevers, through tears, through every sleepless night. And for a second, I didn't see a man. I saw a stranger wearing my son's face, calm, cold, detached. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Just air, just disbelief. My legs moved on their own, turning me toward the door. I stepped outside into the bitter cold. The wind bit at my cheeks, but I didn't flinch. I just walked. I didn't even realize I had left my coat inside until the door shut behind me. No one came out after me. No one called my name. No one cared. I walked down the street, casserole forgotten, hands trembling. Each step felt like I was walking away from my life, the one I built, the one I sacrificed for, the one that lived and breathed inside that boy, dead to him. The words repeated in my mind like a broken lullaby, not screamed, not shouted, just dropped, like they meant nothing. I got home and sat on the couch, still in my sweater, still in my makeup. I don't know how long I sat there. The sun went down, the shadows climbed the walls. My apartment grew darker, colder. I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I looked around, at the framed photos of Ethan on the bookshelf, at the drawing he made in 2nd grade, still magnetized to the fridge, at the birthday card from his 12th birthday that read, "Best Mom Ever." I stared until my eyes blurred. Then the tears came, quiet, relentless, like a faucet left on too long. I buried my face in a cushion and let it all out. I didn't care if the neighbors heard. Let them think I'd lost my mind, because maybe I had. For the next few days, I didn't go to work. I called in sick, though my voice cracked so much I didn't need to explain. I just stayed home, floating somewhere between pain and numbness. I picked up the phone. I typed Ethan's number, then deleted it, then typed it again, then stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the green button, heart hammering in my chest. What would I even say? "I forgive you? Please love me again?" "I'm still alive, Ethan." In the end, I never called. Instead, I sent a single message. I'll always be here if you need me. No matter what you think of me, I love you." He never replied. A week passed, then 2, then a month. Nothing. My phone became a lifeless object. Every buzz made my heart leap. I stopped checking social media. Every time I did, I saw smiling photos of them, Ethan and Jessica, at wineries, in front of designer stores, wrapped in luxury and filtered smiles. Not a trace of me, not even a mention. It was like I had never existed. I tried to distract myself. I went back to work, took longer shifts, cleaned apartments like a ghost. People would talk to me and I'd nod, pretend to listen. But inside I wasn't there. The pain wasn't sharp anymore. It was dull, lingering, heavy, like walking through mud that never let go of your feet. One night I came home late, my hands raw from bleach, my back aching. I took off my shoes, sat down, and turned on the TV, just for the noise. Then I heard it, a voicemail tone. I didn't recognize the number, but my heart jumped anyway. I pressed play. "Hi, this is Ethan's landlord. I think I might have dialed the emergency contact listed on his lease. He hasn't picked up his phone or answered the door for a few days, and his rent's late. Just wondering if you've heard from him." My whole body froze. He hadn't changed the contact, even after saying I was dead to him? I stared at the phone. The message played again. I hit pause. My mind raced. I tried not to panic, but the mother in me didn't care. The years, the silence, they all evaporated. All I could think was, is he okay? I called the number back. No answer. I grabbed my coat and purse and left. I took the last bus into the city and walked the remaining blocks to the address I still remembered. His apartment building was upscale, too clean, too cold. The lobby was locked, of course. I buzzed and buzzed until a young man walked out with his dog and held the door open for me. I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Apartment 3B. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, then pounded. "Ethan? It's me. Are you in there?" Still nothing. I found the building manager, explained the message. At first he was hesitant, said he couldn't just let anyone in. But when I showed him the voicemail and gave him Ethan's full name and birth date, he hesitated, then nodded. When the door finally opened, my heart dropped. The apartment was a mess. Dishes in the sink, clothes on the floor, lights off, and in the corner of the couch, Ethan. He was there, alive, but not okay. He looked up at me, dazed, unshaven, pale, his eyes bloodshot. "Mom," he croaked. I didn't think. I just went to him, knelt down, and wrapped my arms around him. He didn't hug me back. But he didn't push me away either. I held him like I did when he was little, like he was still mine. After a long silence, he whispered, "She left." My throat tightened. "Jessica?" I asked softly. He nodded. 2 weeks ago. Took her stuff. Said I wasn't ambitious enough. Said I was dead weight. I said nothing. What was there to say? He looked at me, really looked, and said, "I thought she loved me. I gave her everything." I reached for his hand. He let me, and then he cried. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. The kind of cry that sounds like someone is leaking from the inside. No sobs, just slow, painful tears. I stayed with him that night, cleaned the dishes, made him tea, tucked a blanket around him while he slept on the couch. In the morning, I made breakfast. He didn't eat much, just pushed the eggs around his plate. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice hoarse. "Because I love you," I answered, like it was the simplest thing in the world. He didn't reply, just stared out the window. I left my number on a note and told him I'd be around if he needed anything. He didn't say goodbye, but he didn't say, "You're dead to me," either. And that, somehow, was progress. Over the next few weeks, we didn't talk. I didn't push. I sent a text every few days. Small things. "Hope you're eating. Remember to sleep. The world is still turning. You're still here." Sometimes he'd reply with a thumbs up emoji, sometimes nothing. But I didn't stop. That's what mothers do. We wait. Even when the door closes, even when the light goes out, we wait in the dark. Because sometimes they come back. And sometimes they don't. But hope doesn't care. Hope just keeps knocking. And I kept knocking too, quietly, patiently. Soft reminders that I still existed, that I was still here, that no matter what he had said, I hadn't vanished from this world. A few weeks passed. Then one evening, a Tuesday I think, I was folding laundry on my couch, the TV playing some old crime show in the background, when my phone buzzed. Ethan. My heart jumped. Not a text this time. It was a call. I answered on the first ring. Hello? He didn't say anything right away. I could hear him breathing. Then finally, Mom? It had been so long since I'd heard him say it like that. Not cold, not distant, but soft, uncertain, like the word had weight again. I'm here, I whispered, sitting down slowly. I don't know why I called. That's okay, I said gently. You don't need a reason. He exhaled. I'm not doing great. My eyes filled. I know, I said. It's okay not to be okay. He was quiet for a while, then asked, Could you maybe come over tomorrow? I don't have food, and I don't want to be alone. My heart broke and stitched itself back together in the same breath. Of course, I said. I'll bring groceries. I'll cook. The next morning, I packed a bag like I was visiting an old friend. Groceries, a spare blanket, tea. I even brought the chicken casserole. Yes, that casserole, because some things never stop being love. When he opened the door, he looked a little better, still tired, still sunken-eyed, but he'd shaved, changed his shirt, tidied the living room. I tried to clean, he mumbled. You did good, I said, smiling. I didn't ask questions, I didn't press. I just went to the kitchen and started cooking. He hovered in the doorway like a boy watching his mother do magic. It was muscle memory to me, chopping, stirring, adding spices without measuring. The kitchen filled with smells of something warm, something that felt like home. While the casserole baked, I sat with him on the couch. We didn't talk about Jessica. We didn't talk about the silence. We talked about the weather, his job, a stray cat that had started visiting his window. Then, while I was slicing bread, he said, She said I was weak. I looked up. She said I didn't have enough drive, that I was holding her back, that I was too soft. I placed the knife down and walked to him. You're not weak, I said, kneeling in front of him. You're kind. That's not a flaw. She said you made me that way. I swallowed hard. He didn't notice. He continued. She said you coddled me, that I was too attached to you, that I'd never be a real man because I still needed my mom. I waited. I guess I believed her, he added. I guess I thought maybe cutting you out would make me stronger. My eyes stung. But now she's gone, he whispered. And you're still here. I nodded. I always will be. He looked at me for a long time, then said something that cracked me open all over again. I didn't mean it. That day, when I said you were dead to me. I know, I whispered. I was trying to prove something, to her, to myself. I thought if I burned the bridge, I could build something better, but some bridges are home, I finished. He nodded. We ate dinner, real food, real silence, real presence. For the first time in what felt like years, he let me hug him when I left. Thank you, he murmured into my shoulder. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Part of me felt like everything would be okay now, like the worst was behind us. But another part of me knew, healing isn't a straight line, and sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. 2 weeks later, he called again, not crying, not broken, just tired. Mom, he said, can we talk? Of course. I came over with groceries again, but this time when I walked in, he had already cooked. Nothing fancy, just pasta and store-bought sauce, but it meant everything. We sat, ate quietly, then he said, I think I need therapy. I nodded. That's brave. He looked surprised. You think so? I do, I said. Asking for help, it's the bravest thing a person can do. He stared at his plate, then muttered, I've been thinking about Dad. My stomach tensed. Aaron, the ghost in our story. What about him? I asked gently. Why he left, why he didn't stay, why he never called. I sighed. He wasn't ready. He didn't know how to love the way you needed. Do you think he loved you? No, I said softly. Not really, but I loved him. Enough for a while. He was quiet. Then, I don't remember him. Not really. That's okay, I said. You had me. He nodded. And now I have you again. I smiled, but something flickered in his eyes, a shadow. And that's when he said it. Jessica's pregnant. The world tilted. I didn't move, didn't blink. She called me 2 days ago, said she's keeping it, said it's mine. I felt like I'd been punched. And? I asked, my voice too calm. I don't know, he said. She doesn't want to get back together. She just wants help, money, support. Do you want to be involved? He stared at me, helpless. I don't know how to be a father, Mom. I don't even know how to be a man. I reached across the table and held his hand. You learn, the same way I did, day by day. His voice cracked. What if I mess up? You will, I said, and you'll fix it, and love anyway. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Will you help me? I swallowed the lump in my throat and said what I never stopped meaning, even when he forgot I existed. Always. That's what I told him, and I meant it, even after the silence, even after the pain. I meant it in the way only a mother can mean it, bone deep, blood deep. No matter what came next, I'd be there. And what came next was harder than I imagined. The first few days after he told me about the baby, Ethan was quiet again, more distant. Not rude, just buried. I'd send him little notes, drop off groceries. But he barely replied. I understood. He was spiraling inside, afraid, confused, grieving the life he thought he'd have and preparing for one he didn't choose. Then one day he called. She wants to meet. My throat tightened. Jessica? Yeah, she says we need to talk about the baby. Do you want me to come? He hesitated. Would that be weird? No, I said gently. It would be love. He exhaled, and that was my answer. We met at a cafe. I got there early and sat beside Ethan in a small booth. He looked sharp, clean-shaven, button-down shirt, but I could see the nerves in the way he tapped his fingers. Jessica arrived 10 minutes late, her hair perfectly styled, nails still flawless. She didn't look pregnant, not visibly. But something in her face had changed, sharper, colder. She barely acknowledged me, just nodded, then looked straight at Ethan and said, So, the baby. No warm-up, no small talk, just business. She pulled out a folder and started listing things. Doctor visits, insurance, support payments. I've already made a schedule. Ethan looked overwhelmed. I tried to speak gently. Have you thought about shared custody? About how Ethan can be involved? Jessica raised an eyebrow. Involved? He's not even ready to be a father. He wants to try, I said, my voice calm but firm. She turned to him. Do you? He nodded. I do. I just need time. I want to be part of our child's life. Jessica scoffed. Part of it? You didn't even answer my text for 2 weeks. You broke me, he said quietly. I had to climb back from nothing. Her eyes narrowed. You weren't nothing. You were weak. That was enough. I placed my hand on Ethan's. You are not weak. You are healing. There's a difference. Jessica stood up. I didn't come here to argue. I stood too. Then maybe next time, don't come with insults. She picked up her purse. I'll have my lawyer send the terms. You can be present, if you prove you're stable, and I mean consistently stable. With that, she left. Ethan slumped in his seat, eyes glassy. Why did I love her? He whispered. I didn't answer. There was no answer that would make him feel better. But I sat there, I held his hand, and that night I stayed with him again, just in case the silence tried to pull him under. The next few months were quiet, but heavy. Ethan started therapy, twice a week. He invited me to a session once. I sat beside him as he talked about his childhood, about Aaron, about the moment he told me I was dead to him. He cried. So did I. His therapist said healing wasn't about erasing the pain. It was about giving it space, then choosing to live anyway. That became our mantra, live anyway. Ethan got a new job, small startup, nothing fancy, but he liked the people. He started smiling again. He took walks. He called me every Sunday, just like he used to. And then one morning he called and said, she had the baby. My heart stopped. A girl, he whispered, 7 pounds, 6 ounces. Her name is Nora. Nora. I whispered it back like it was a prayer. Can I meet her? I asked softly. He hesitated. I'll talk to Jessica. It took 2 weeks, but finally he called and said, come over. When I arrived, I expected to see Jessica, but it was just Ethan, and a tiny bundle sleeping in a bassinet by the window. She's letting me have visits, he said. Supervised, at first, but this weekend she's letting Nora stay overnight. I walked slowly toward the bassinet, afraid to breathe. And there she was, Perfect. Round cheeks, dark lashes, tiny fingers curled like question marks. I reached out. Can I? He nodded. Of course. I lifted her, my arms remembering how to hold something so small. And suddenly, I was 22 again, in that hospital room, holding Ethan, feeling the world quiet around me, only now it was different. Now I was the grandmother. I kissed her forehead. She smelled like milk and hope. She's beautiful, I whispered. She has your eyes, he said. I looked at him. Tears filled his eyes. I don't want to mess this up. You won't, I said, because you love her. He nodded. Because I had you. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not because everything was fixed, but because something new had begun. Peace never stays long. It visits like spring sunlight, warm, gentle, but never permanent. The days after I met Nora were the quiet kind of beautiful. Ethan seemed lighter. He texted me photos of her, sleeping, yawning, wearing little pink onesies with bunnies on them. He was learning how to hold her, how to change diapers, how to read the rhythm of her tiny cries. He was learning how to be a father, and I was learning how to love again without fear. We started making dinners together, me, Ethan, and Nora. I'd bring ingredients, and he'd do the chopping while I held her. We made soups, casseroles, even pancakes for dinner once. The apartment was still small, but it smelled like laughter again. Sometimes I'd catch Ethan staring at her with this stunned look, like he couldn't believe she was real. And once he whispered to her, I almost didn't get to know you. I almost let the pain win. I didn't interrupt. I just watched quietly as my boy became a man. But life doesn't let you keep anything too easily. It started with a message from Jessica. I'm moving, out of state, taking Nora with me. Ethan stared at the screen like it had slapped him. No, he said out loud. She can't. We spent hours that night looking at custody laws, calling lawyers, checking visitation rights. But Jessica wasn't bluffing. She had full custody, and if she wanted to relocate, there was almost nothing we could do to stop her. Ethan begged. He offered to pay more, to fly out monthly, to relocate himself, but Jessica was firm. I need distance, she texted, and stability. You bring chaos. When Ethan showed me that message, I watched something collapse inside him. Not loudly, not like a building falling, but slowly, like a bridge giving out beneath water. I can't lose her, he whispered. You won't, I said. We'll find a way. But I didn't have answers, just hope. The night before she left, Jessica allowed one last visit. 2 hours, no overnights, no photos, no keepsakes. Ethan dressed Nora in the little yellow dress. He rocked her, sang to her, told her stories she'd never remember, but that would live inside her, somehow. I stayed quiet, watched him say goodbye to the one thing that had saved him. When Jessica arrived to pick her up, she barely looked at me. She took Nora without emotion. Ethan handed her over with hands that shook. He didn't cry, not then. But when the door closed, he dropped to his knees. I knelt beside him. He whispered, It feels like she died. I held him, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself cry too. The weeks that followed were gray. Ethan went back to therapy. I started sleeping less. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., wondering if Nora was warm enough, if Jessica was gentle, if she would remember us at all. We sent gifts. Jessica returned most of them. We mailed letters. She never replied. And slowly, Nora faded into a memory. But some memories don't stay buried. One rainy afternoon, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it and gasped. Ethan stood there, soaked, wild-eyed, shivering. She sent me a video, he said, voice breaking. He pushed his phone into my hands. I played it. It was Nora, sitting in a high chair, laughing, covered in spaghetti. But the camera shook, and in the background, Jessica's voice screamed at someone. Do I have to do everything? You're useless. I told you not to let her eat like that. The video cut off. Ethan whispered, She's yelling at her, all the time. I can hear it in the background of every video. He dropped into a chair, hands gripping his knees. I need to fight for her. You should, I said. I don't have money. I'll find it. I might lose. We'll try anyway. So we tried. The custody battle was brutal. Jessica painted Ethan as unstable. She brought up his therapy, twisted it into weakness. She said I was manipulative, too attached, that we were codependent and emotionally damaging. It hurt. God, it hurt. But Ethan stayed calm, focused, honest. He told the judge about his mistakes, his healing, his love. He didn't lie. And somehow, maybe because of that, the judge listened. He granted Ethan supervised visits again, in our city, every third weekend. Nora would stay in a child-friendly facility, and we'd have to visit her there. No home visits yet, no overnights. It wasn't perfect, but it was something, and sometimes something is everything. The first visit was surreal. We walked into the playroom, bright walls, toys scattered everywhere. Nora was sitting on the floor, holding a stuffed giraffe. When she saw Ethan, she blinked. He knelt down and smiled gently. "Hi, baby, it's Daddy." She stared. Then slowly, she smiled. Just a little, but enough. She toddled over, climbed into his lap, and just like that, the world tilted back into place. I stayed back, watched him read her a book, watched her curl against him like she remembered, deep in her little bones, that he was hers. And he always would be. Fragile, tiny, but alive. And over the next few months, Ethan watered it with every visit. The child-friendly center became our second home. Each third weekend, we brought a small bag of toys, books, and clothes. Ethan kept track of everything. Which doll was her favorite, which story made her giggle, which song helped her fall asleep on his shoulder. Nora didn't speak much at first, just little words. Hi. More. Dada. The first time she said that, Dada, Ethan looked at me, eyes wide like she'd handed him a crown. He didn't cry, he just smiled. That rare, deep smile I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. And he whispered, "I'm still her father." Every time we left the center, Nora cried, quietly, clutching his shirt, and Jessica's assistant, never Jessica herself, would gently peel her away. It broke us every time, but we came back anyway. Love does that. It keeps showing up. Jessica didn't make it easy. She filed a complaint after the second month, said Ethan was emotionally manipulating their daughter by blurring boundaries. She accused me of interfering by showing affection, even though I'd barely held Nora's hand. The court almost suspended visits, but Ethan's therapist submitted a statement, described Ethan's growth, his stability, his consistent behavior. The judge agreed to allow visits to continue, with additional observation. So we adjusted. We followed every rule. We smiled at every staff member. We brought healthier snacks. We stayed on the rug. We never whispered, never raised our voices. We were perfect. And still, then, it didn't feel like enough. Because Nora was growing, she started asking questions. Why can't I come home with you? Why is Mommy mad? Why do I only see you on weekends? Ethan would blink away tears and answer gently. We're working on it, baby. One day. But one day came sooner than we expected. It happened on a Wednesday. Jessica called Ethan directly, for the first time in nearly a year. Her voice was clipped, sharp. I need you to take her, for a while. Ethan froze. What do you mean? I have to go out of state. Personal stuff. I don't want to bring her. It's messy. I thought I wasn't fit to be around her, he said bitterly. I don't have time to argue, she snapped. She'll be at the center Friday. Pick her up. Keep her through Monday. Ethan hung up without another word. He called me right after. She's letting Nora stay with me, for 3 nights. I didn't cheer. I didn't jump. I just exhaled. Okay, I said. We'll make it count. We spent Thursday cleaning the apartment top to bottom, bought new sheets, a pink comforter, glow-in-the-dark stars for the ceiling. We stocked the fridge with tiny yogurts and apple juice. I sewed her name on a pillow. Ethan hung a string of fairy lights over her crib. When Friday came, he picked her up alone. She arrived clutching a bag shaped like a kitten, and when she saw me, she ran into my arms. No hesitation, just warmth, like we hadn't lost all that time. We spent the weekend making pancakes, drawing on the floor, dancing to old Disney songs. Ethan read to her every night, the same book over and over, Goodnight Moon. On the last night, she looked up at him and said, I love you, Dada. He froze, then scooped her up, holding her like she was the world, because she was. But Jessica wasn't done. On Monday morning, when Ethan brought Nora to the center, Jessica was waiting. She took one look at Nora's glittery shoes and said, You're spoiling her. Ethan stayed calm. We're loving her. Jessica narrowed her eyes. We'll see what the court says. And the very next week, she filed for full permanent relocation rights, claimed the extended visit had been a mistake, and that Ethan's presence was causing behavioral issues. We were stunned. Ethan felt betrayed and scared. She's trying to erase me again, he said. She won't, I said. We'll fight. He looked at me broken. Mom, I can't go through this again. Yes, I said firmly. You can, because she's worth it. and you are too. We found a new attorney, someone who cared, a woman with soft eyes and a voice that could turn to steel when needed. She told us what we already feared, that it would be hard, expensive, long. But she also said something we hadn't heard before. You have a real shot. She reviewed every visit log, every therapist's report, every observation from the center, and when we walked into the courtroom 3 months later, we didn't walk in alone. We walked in with truth. Ethan stood before the judge and read a statement, voice steady, hands trembling. He spoke about Nora, about Jessica, about the mistakes he had made, and the man he was becoming. He ended with this: I'm not asking for revenge, I'm not asking to win. I'm asking for a chance, a real one, because I love my daughter, and I believe love deserves a place. The judge didn't speak for a long time, but when he finally did, he granted Ethan joint legal custody and physical visitation every month in our home. We didn't cry, not there, but in the car, with the doors closed, we wept, because sometimes hope wins. And sometimes the broken things get patched back together, not perfectly, but real. For a moment, it felt like we could breathe again, not fully, not deeply, but enough. Ethan now had real custody. 1 weekend a month, Nora would be with us, not in a sterile playroom with cameras, but home, in his apartment, in her tiny room with stars on the ceiling and books on the shelf and her name sewn into her pillow. And every time she arrived, it felt like a holiday. She'd come bursting through the door with that little backpack shaped like a kitten, running to Ethan, then to me. Her laughter filled every crack in the walls we'd once cried against. Ethan tried to give her the world in those short visits: pancake breakfasts, bedtime stories, art projects, hikes in the park. He let her water the balcony plants and called them Nora's garden. She took it seriously, always asking how her flowers were doing when she left. But love isn't just in the magical moments. It's in the tired ones, too. And Ethan, as joyful as he was, began to fray. Because co-parenting with Jessica wasn't like sharing, it was surviving. The messages started small: late drop-offs, missed calls, then more aggressive. She said you made her cry. What did you say to her? Don't give her junk food again. You're trying to make her love you more than me. Jessica accused, demanded, criticized. Every time Nora came home with a crayon drawing, Jessica would find something to ruin it. She drew your house, she texted once. She said she wants to live there. Stop manipulating her. Ethan stayed calm, for a while, but I could see him wearing thin. He was juggling long work hours, therapy, court-mandated parenting classes, and Nora's monthly visits, each one both a blessing and a trigger. He barely slept, barely ate. I started staying over again when Nora was visiting, just to cook, help, keep him upright. One night, after Nora had fallen asleep, I found him sitting on the edge of the tub in the bathroom, fully dressed, head in his hands. I'm scared, he whispered. I sat on the floor beside him. Scared of what? That I'm going to break. And if I break now, I'll lose her. You won't, I said, because you're not alone. He didn't reply, just leaned his head on my shoulder. And I thought to myself, how many more storms can one boy survive? Then came the worst storm of all. It was a Friday. Nora was due to arrive by 5 p.m. By 6:15, no word. By 6:30, Ethan had called 3 times. No answer. By 7, he was pacing, frantic. I'm going over there, he said. I grabbed my keys. I'm coming too. We drove through the rain, silent except for the windshield wipers and Ethan's tapping fingers. When we pulled up to Jessica's place, the lights were on. Her car was in the driveway. He rang the bell. No answer. He rang again and again. Then, through the window, we saw movement. Jessica appeared, opened the door just a crack. She's not coming, she said coldly. Ethan blinked. What? She's sick, fever. I'm keeping her here. Why didn't you call? Jessica shrugged. Didn't feel like it. He clenched his fists. I could have helped. I should be there when she's sick. She asked for me, Jessica said, voice like ice. Not you. Then she shut the door in his face. He stood there, rain dripping off his coat, frozen. I reached for his arm. Let's go, I whispered. Before you do something you'll regret. That night, Ethan sat in his apartment with Nora's untouched pajamas folded beside him. Her little drawings taped to the wall, a storybook still open on the couch. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. I sat with him until dawn. The following week, Ethan contacted his lawyer again. I want more time, he said. More consistency, more rights. The lawyer frowned. Are you sure? I'm sure. So we filed, and once again the war began. Jessica fought hard. She brought every insult back to the courtroom, claimed Ethan abandoned her emotionally, said I was inserting myself into Nora's life. She even brought screenshots of social media posts, a photo of me and Nora baking cookies, and called it emotional interference. But this time something was different. Ethan didn't shrink, he didn't flinch, he stood firm. "Yes, my mother helps me," he said in court. "Because good parents raise children, great parents raise parents, and I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for her." Even the judge looked surprised. I felt my chest swell, not with pride, but with awe. He was growing into someone I always believed he could be. And the judge? She saw it too. She granted Ethan every other weekend, not just one per month, and 1 week each summer. It was a win, not a perfect one, but a win. Nora's next visit was longer. 7 whole days. We made a paper chain with 7 loops and tore one off each morning. She ran barefoot through sprinklers, helped Ethan bake a cake, a mess of icing and flour and laughter. She asked to sleep in his bed once. He said yes. She curled up beside him like a kitten. One night, she sat on the porch with me and said, "Grandma, you know what I wish?" "What, baby?" "I wish I could live here all the time." I felt my throat tighten, but I smiled. "I wish that too." She leaned on my arm and whispered, "I like Mommy, but I feel safe here." I kissed her head and didn't say another word. Because when a child says she feels safe, you hold that, you protect it, with everything. That week with Nora felt like magic borrowed from the future, the kind of peace you don't realize is fragile until it shatters, and it shattered fast. The call came on a Thursday morning. I was making breakfast when Ethan's phone rang. He answered casually, half chewing a piece of toast, but within seconds, everything changed. His face drained. He dropped the toast. The phone slipped slightly from his fingers. I stood. What happened? He didn't speak at first, just stared ahead, like someone had pulled the floor out from under him. Then he whispered, "It's Dad, Aaron, he died." I froze. Not because I mourned Aaron, but because I knew, in my son's heart, that door had never fully closed, even if it should have. Aaron had a heart attack, alone, in a motel 3 states away, no family listed, no will. The police found Ethan's name on an old contact form. That's why they called him. Not out of love, out of default. We sat at the table for a long time, neither of us sure what to feel. "He left me," Ethan said quietly. "Walked out before I had teeth. Never called, never visited." I nodded. "And now he's gone." Ethan looked down. "Why does it still hurt?" "Because you're human," I said. He wiped his eyes, angry. "Why does it feel like I lost something I never had?" I wanted to say, because we always grieve the idea of love, even when it never existed, but I didn't. I just reached for his hand. A week later, we drove down to the city where Aaron died. There was no funeral, no headstone, just paperwork, a storage unit, and silence. Inside the storage unit were a few old boxes, clothes, receipts, junk. But in the corner was a folder. Ethan opened it. Inside were drawings, crayon-scribbled pages, stick figures labeled "Me plus Daddy," little notes in a child's hand. Ethan stared. "These are mine." I took one and flipped it over. My handwriting was on the back. "For Aaron. He wanted to draw you a picture." I felt sick. Ethan kept going. Photo after photo. A birthday card we never mailed. A letter Ethan wrote when he was 6. "I miss you. Do you miss me?" He held it like it was burning him. "He kept them," Ethan whispered. And that was the cruelest part. He didn't show up, but he kept the proof that we did. On the drive home, Ethan didn't speak much. But that night, he held Nora longer than usual. Read her 3 stories instead of 1. Kissed her forehead twice. And after she fell asleep, he looked at me. "I'm not going to be like him. I know. No matter what happens, I won't disappear." "You never did," I said softly. "You came back." But life wasn't done testing him. The next week, Jessica filed again, this time for full termination of Ethan's parental rights. We couldn't believe it. Her reasoning? Ethan's emotional instability after his father's death shows he is still unfit to parent. That was the sentence. That was what she clung to. Pain, being used as proof of weakness. Ethan sat across from our lawyer, silent. Then he stood. "I want to fight." "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked. "Yes," he said, "because I'm tired of apologizing for being human." We prepared for court, letters, reports, witnesses, therapist statements, everything. I even offered to testify. Ethan tried to stop me. "Mom, I don't want her to tear you down too." "I'm not afraid," I said, and I wasn't, not anymore. Because when someone tries to take your child's child, you stop being afraid. You become steel. In court, Jessica sat cold as ice. Her lawyer listed Ethan's grief, his therapy sessions, the fact that he let Nora sleep in his bed when she was scared of the dark. They tried to twist everything into failure. Then it was my turn. I stood, swore in, and told the truth. I was 17 when I first saw Ethan kick in my belly. I was 22 when I held him for the first time, 39 when he left home, 47 when he said I was dead to him. I paused. He came back to life, for his daughter, for himself. I looked right at the judge. He is not broken, he's healing, and if we punish people for hurting, we will never raise a generation that dares to love deeply again. The courtroom was silent. Even Jessica looked shaken. We waited 3 weeks for the ruling, 3 long, sleepless weeks. And then, the letter came. Custody granted, no termination, equal weekends and full summer visitation. Jessica appealed, of course, but she lost. The judge's closing note? This father has demonstrated not just love, but growth, the kind of growth that comes only from facing pain and choosing not to pass it on. That night, Ethan held Nora in the garden. Fireflies danced in the air. He whispered, "You're safe." And I stood by the door, watching my son become the man I always hoped he would be. Summer came with long days and even longer evenings. Nora was ours for 6 whole weeks. We didn't travel. We didn't plan anything grand. But those weeks were everything. She played in the backyard with bare feet and sticky fingers from popsicles. She helped Ethan wash the car with a sponge twice her size. She curled up in my lap after dinner and asked me to brush her hair until she fell asleep. And in between those moments, the quiet ones, healing happened in places we didn't know were still broken. Ethan started laughing more, real laughter, the kind that didn't sound like he was forcing it. He even invited a coworker over for dinner one night, just a friend. But the fact that he let someone else in, it meant something. He was learning that he could live and love at the same time. He was becoming whole. And then one night, Nora asked a question that made the room stop. We were sitting outside, the sky deep purple, fireflies blinking like tiny stars. She was in Ethan's lap, holding her stuffed giraffe, and she looked up and asked, "Why don't Mommy and Daddy love each other?" The air changed. Ethan went still. I waited, because that was his moment, not mine. He took a breath. "We loved each other once," he said gently, "and then we changed." "Like butterflies?" she asked. He smiled. "Sort of, but not always in the same direction." She looked confused. "But you love me, right?" "With everything I have," he said. "Always." She nodded. That was enough for now. But I could see the question had landed somewhere deep inside her. Children are mirrors. They show you not who you pretend to be, but who you are when no one's looking. And Nora, with her big eyes and soft voice, was showing us both how far we'd come, and how far we still had to go. Then something unexpected happened. Jessica stopped fighting. Just stopped. No new complaints, no angry texts, no surprise filings. She even began responding to Ethan's check-ins with simple, polite answers. We were suspicious at first. "What's she planning?" Ethan asked. "Maybe nothing," I said. "Maybe she's tired too. Because sometimes even anger runs out of fuel, and while we didn't trust her completely, we allowed space for change. Cautiously, carefully. We didn't talk badly about her in front of Nora. We didn't gloat when things went our way. We just let peace exist where it could. And maybe that's what made the next decision possible. It happened in the last week of summer. Ethan was driving Nora home after their visit. She was asleep in the back seat, clutching her giraffe, as always. He pulled into Jessica's driveway, heart pounding, like it always did. But instead of coming out angry or rushed, Jessica stepped outside quietly, calm, composed. And she said something Ethan never expected to hear. "You're doing a good job." He blinked. "What?" "With her," she said. "With everything. You're doing better than I thought you would." He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. She paused, then added, "I don't hate you, I just couldn't keep bleeding for someone who wouldn't stop their own bleeding." He swallowed hard. "I get it," he said. And in that strange moment, on that driveway under fading sunlight, something broke open. Not forgiveness, not reunion, but mutual release. And that sometimes is enough. Ethan came home that night quiet, but not heavy. He sat with me on the porch and said, "She doesn't hate me anymore." "Maybe she never truly did," I said. "Maybe she just didn't know what to do with the version of you that was broken." He looked at me. "And now?" "Now she's seeing the one who survived." The next few months passed gently. Nora grew taller, braver. She lost a tooth and was so excited she called Ethan in the middle of his work meeting to show him on video. Ethan started dating someone, quietly. A woman named Camille, soft-spoken, steady, the kind of presence that didn't demand attention, just made space for it. He introduced her to Nora after 3 months, slowly, carefully. Camille brought Nora a tiny daisy chain and asked her about her drawings. They sat in the living room for an hour, coloring while Ethan made dinner. Later that night, Ethan asked Nora, "Did you like her?" Nora nodded. "She smells like strawberries." It was enough. One night, while cleaning, I found the old shoebox under my bed. Ethan's childhood notes, little crayon thank yous, a button from his baby sweater, a hospital bracelet. I brought it out and sat with Ethan. We looked through them together. He held one tiny note. "Thank you for dinner. I love you, Mommy." He smiled, then looked at me. I was so small. "You were everything," I said. He reached out, held my hand. "I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you weren't." Tears slipped down my face. "You came back," I whispered. "That's all that matters." And in that moment, the last piece of pain loosened from my chest, not forgotten, not erased, but finally forgiven. The years passed the way sunlight fades over a quiet lake, slowly, warmly, with ripples you don't notice until they've reached the shore. Nora turned 7. She was reading full sentences, telling jokes that barely made sense, and asking bigger questions about the world, about family, about love. And on a Tuesday evening, as Ethan tucked her into bed, she looked up at him and asked, "Do people always come back when they leave?" He froze. "Sometimes," he said softly, "if they're lucky." "Mom said you left," she whispered, "and that you hurt her." He sat down beside her, gently pulling the blanket over her shoulder. "I did," he said, "a long time ago, and I'm sorry." She looked at him, eyes wide. "Did you stop loving her?" "No," he whispered, "but I didn't know how to be a person who loved without hurting." She didn't say anything right away. Then she whispered, "I'm glad you came back." He kissed her forehead. "Me too." Nora's presence stitched our lives into something that finally resembled peace. Camille became part of that too, not all at once, not like lightning, but like rain on dry soil, slow, real, necessary. She never tried to replace anyone. She just showed up, for Ethan, for Nora, even for me. One night, I caught her washing dishes after dinner, humming a song I used to sing when Ethan was little. She didn't know I was listening, but I felt something inside me melt. Ethan proposed to her the following spring. Nora was the flower girl. She insisted on wearing sparkly shoes and holding both Ethan's and Camille's hands at the altar. I sat in the front row, alone, but not lonely. For the first time in decades, I wasn't carrying anyone. I was simply watching. Watching the boy I raised stand tall, in a suit, in the light, holding a woman who saw him for who he was, and still chose him. And in that moment, I felt something close. A door, a wound, a chapter. Something that had been open for too long finally eased shut. After the ceremony, Ethan found me in the quiet hallway beside the reception. He was still in his suit, a little rumpled now, his tie loose, his eyes tired, but shining. "Mom," he said. I turned. He pulled me into a hug, tighter than he had in years. "I want you to move in," he whispered. I laughed. "Don't be ridiculous." "I'm serious. We'll build a little guest house in the back. Nora wants you closer." "I'm fine where I am." "Your family," he said. "And I want my daughter to grow up surrounded by it." I blinked fast, willing away tears. "I don't want to get in the way." He pulled back, looked at me, really looked. "You were never in the way," he said. "I was just lost." So I moved, not far, just behind them. A small cottage with a garden, a porch swing, and a kitchen that always smells like coffee and rosemary. Nora visits every day, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. She calls it Grandma's house, but sometimes she calls it home. Ethan and Camille bring dinner over every Sunday. We eat, we talk, we laugh. There are no more explosions, no slammed doors, no long silences, just life, lived, fully, together. One day, a letter arrived, no return address, just my name and handwriting I recognized instantly, Aaron's. I sat at the table, hands shaking, and opened it. It was short, barely 3 paragraphs. He wrote that he'd never stopped thinking about Ethan, that he'd kept the drawings because they were the only proof he had that he'd been loved once. And then this. I never stopped regretting. I was just too much of a coward to fix it. But I see now, you didn't just raise a son, you raised a man. And I hope that counts for something. I folded the letter, pressed it to my chest, and wept. Not because I wanted him back, but because even ghosts sometimes apologize. Years passed. Nora grew taller, smarter, fiercer. At 13, she started asking deeper questions about Ethan's past, about Jessica, about me. I told her the truth, softly, gently, without blame. And when I was done, she hugged me tight and said, "You're the reason Dad's still here." I didn't answer, because I didn't have to. One evening, many years later, I sat on the porch swing. Ethan brought me tea. Nora, now in college, was home for the weekend. She was inside helping Camille set the table. He sat beside me. "You were right," he said. "About what?" "Love doesn't die," he said. "It just waits, quietly, patiently, until we come back to it." I nodded, smiling. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For never giving up, even when I did." I looked at him, this man, this father, this son, and I said the words I'd waited a lifetime to say. "You came back. That's all I ever needed." So, if you've ever been told you were dead to someone, if you've ever been broken by the very person you gave life to, if you've waited years for a door to open again, I hope this story reminds you, love doesn't always shout. Sometimes it waits, and sometimes it returns. When it's ready, when they're ready, and when it does, you'll know, because you'll feel the light again. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to When Voices Break. This is where real stories live, where pain finds a voice, where healing begins. Subscribe, like, share, for the mothers, for the sons, for everyone who came back or is still waiting. Thank you for listening.